Welcome everyone to my Endgame series, and this one is lesson number 2. And today I'm going to explain to you how you can checkmate when you have two rooks and a king versus a single king. And once again, I'm going to tell to you that over here I will talk about a calculation, but as well as I will talk about the steps in which you just have to follow it and then you just get the result. That's it. Okay. Now let's come to the step number 1. Select the last line. Even in the previous video, I already explained to you about what is the last line. Last line means from there the pieces cannot go beyond. So that is H5, A5, first rank and 8th rank. From there the pieces cannot go beyond. Why we have to select the last line? Because we will push our opponent's king to that direction. Now, our opponent's king will not, knowingly will move towards there. So what we have to do? We have to push the king in the last ring. Now, in the queens and a king endgame, I told you that we have to bring the king into the game because the queen was alone. But here you have two rooks, so you no need to worry about and keep the king away from the action area. So now the step number 2 is what? Use your one rook to hold the upper line and another rook to attack. And as I told to you, you will keep the king away from it. Now we decided, let that example, we will push the king on the 8th rank. Now, of course, black will knowingly not even move. So what we have to do, we will use one of our rook to hold the upper line. Okay, so that the king cannot go beyond that one, right? So from now, the king cannot go onto the 4th rank. Now, example, opponent's king move here. So another rook you will use to attack. One rook will hold the upper line and another rook will attack. So now it's a check. King cannot go up. The king has to go back. Let's example, the king moves to e6. Now here you will see, now we don't need the h4 rook over here because the king cannot move 2 square. And in the previous move, what the h4 rook is doing, now the a5 rook is doing the same. Now it's just controlling the upper line. So what we will do, now the a5 rook will be there and h4 rook will attack. So it's kind of like a boxer, like a one punch, just keep it for the defense and another punch basically we just use for the punch, for the attack. Now rook to h6. Once again, the king moves to e7. You can see now we don't need the a5 rook here because the king cannot move that much, and the h6 rook is simply just holding the upper line so the king cannot move up. So we will play the another rook on a a7 check. King moves to back and this is simple checkmate. So one rook will hold the upper line, another rook will attack. Now this guy will hold the upper line, another rook will attack. Just like that one. Now you will say, you just see the file wise, the rank wise. Now I see the file wise. Okay, see. Now just take an example of the same position. What we will do, we have to hold the upper line. So simple. Now I wanted to show to you the file wise. So first we see the horizontal wise or the rank wise. Now we will see the file with the same position. Second rule, what it says, use one rook to hold it. So what we will do, keep the rook on e3. So what this rook is doing, just holding the upper line so the king cannot go that side. And now our last line has been shifted to this one, that is a5. So we will push the king to the a5. Opponent moves the king on a d6. Now we cannot bring our rook there. So what we will do, I will just keep the king back once. Just one move I have to waste it. Check. And once again, now this rook is controlling the upper line. Okay. And another rook is free to attack. Check. Now one rook, now this guy, the d2 rook is free and c3 rook is just holding the upper line. So d2 rook we will use to give the check. And when it will move back, it's simple check. Now one thing you have to notice that you will not put both of the rook onto the same file or the same rank. So the mobilization of the rook should be freely. They should move. They are not stopping or guarding each other. For example, over here, like after this, maybe the king, yeah, this king moves. Example, this king, this just rook back. Now you will see that giving a check is difficult, right? That one guy, he cannot go freely. Okay, so one thing you have to just keep in mind. So that's it about the two rooks checkmate. Now there is one if is comes, that if my one of the rook my opponents attack, then what I will do? So example, the same thing like rook to h4, king moves here, check, and king moves on f6. Now once again, I will just play the move rook to h6, it's a check, and after the move king to g7, my rook is under attack. Now what I have? There are two things over here can be possible. First, you can move away the rook, but maintain the file or the rank wherever you are. Just maintain the file and rank and move away from the opponent's king. Or second thing what you can do, you can just defend it with another rook like this one. So now the opponent's king cannot take the white's rook because the another rook is protecting. So here the king will move on this side, the f7. Now check, king moves on g8. Now over here you will see that the checkmate is not possible because the king will take it. Once again, what I will do, just simple move the rook one square, I just waited. Now my opponent cannot take my rook because my another rook is protecting, and when the king will move to fa, I will just go the checkmate. So what you have to do, whenever your rook is under attack, it's up to you what you want to do. Like if you wanted to move away, you can move away. If you wanted to defend it, you can defend it. It's up to you. So that's it for today, and thank you so much for joining.